All right, it is exactly 8 minutes past the hour of 2, and I would like to once again welcome you all for this webinar session. My name is Gabriel Achai, and I bring you very warm greetings from the Secretariat of the East Africa Law Society in Arusha, Tanzania. Arusha this afternoon is quite chilly. That is why I'm heavily covered with my jacket. But it's good to have you all this afternoon in the session that is analyzing roadblocks and prospects for East Africa capital markets. And this session is quite an interesting session that has been deliberately designed to have capital markets enthusiasts to understand what emerging trends there are on the in the capital markets, but also what opportunities and challenges are out there for lawyers who are interested in this field. So I, on behalf of the East Africa Law Society, encourage you to participate, to buckle up and enjoy the session. We have a number of experts whom we've sourced for this particular webinar session, and you will be hearing more from them. Without further ado, permit me to introduce the moderator of the session, who is Ms. Rachel Olinga. Rachel is a legal profession with over 7 years experience. She currently works with corporate legal and human resource. She's the corporate legal and human resource manager at Rombas Construction Company. She's a highly skilled lady in providing legal advice and support to several corporate entities, and she is well studied with an LLM in international financial laws and regulations, and she's quite conversant with investor protection in the public markets, public-private partnerships, contract management. She's a member of the Uganda Law Society, the Kenya Law Society, and the East Africa Law Society. And she is best suited to moderate this session this afternoon. So Rachel, you are welcome. Come and take it away and introduce our panelists. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. I am happy to be here. Once again, my name is Rachel Olinga, and I am so honored to moderate this session. And like Gabriel has said, by the time we leave this place, we are going to be able to have so much in knowledge, because the people that we have lined up for these sessions are quite experienced. We have Patricia, we have Kenneth Mwasi, we have Brenna Ishimwe, and we have Alison Pikiriza and Gracia Gahimbare, who are going to show us and lead us and expand on our knowledge, on our vast knowledge, and so much that we are going to be able to discover. I know by the end of have an overview, especially on understanding what the capital markets, especially in East Africa, is, what the markets entail, what are the roadblocks, and how we can be able to integrate this market for all the people in East Africa, and also as advocates or as lawyers and all practitioners in this area of practice, how we can be able to join in and be able to advise our clients correctly. So without further ado, I would love to quickly introduce Patricia Mutiso, who is our first presenter, and she's going to discuss introductions to capital markets in the region. Thank you, Patricia. I would love to briefly talk about Patricia. She's a seasoned Kenyan lawyer with an international interdisciplinary background in the fields of law, international studies, and she has experience of over 10 years in a myriad of legal fields, capital markets, commercial and corporate legal compliance, plus also Islamic finance. Patricia has worked with quite a number of companies and has been able to draft even the Islamic Private Fund, that is AI Awal Private Investment Fund. Patricia has been able to be involved in drafting and negotiating of the East African Community Integration Process for the Common Market Protocol. She has also been able to participate and involved in drafting of the incorporation documents of the First Islamic Public Fund, First Ethical Opportunities Fund, and right now she is coordinating a project funded by Ford Foundation to enhance the rule of law, good governance, and public interest litigation in East Africa. Patricia has worked with great companies that we all know, like Oraro and Company Advocates. She has worked as a commercial and corporate department she was a partner in commercial and corporate department. She has also worked as a legal manager at First Community Bank. So we are having somebody who is very well conversant with the markets areas and on capital markets. So I would love to introduce you to Patricia Mutiso. Karibu, Patricia. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. Thank you so much for having me. I have been tasked to do the honor of introducing the capital markets in East Africa. So we are going to take it. So long time ago, in the 1950s, that is when the first stock exchange was formed, and that was the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So we are going to look at the history of capital markets in a snapshot. And after that, in around 1977, after the collapse of the East African community, we find that most of the companies that were from Tanzania and Uganda, they were delisted and nationalized, and they went back to being in Uganda and Tanzania. But later on in 1990, Uganda and Tanzania, they established their stock exchange, and most recently, Rwanda also onboarded in 2011 and also established its own stock exchange. So what we say about the East African capital markets is right now the East African partner states are about 7. So you're going to forgive me when I speak about a few of them, because those are the major ones which have developed. So we have the capital markets in Kenya, we have the Capital Markets Authority in Uganda, we have the Capital Markets and Securities Authority in Tanzania, we have the Rwanda capital markets. In Burundi, what is going on with the capital market and portfolio investment is that it's still growing, but there is traction in that they've already started looking at the capital markets. With DRC, which is Congo, the capital market is still underdeveloped, but you have the issuance of treasury bonds. When it comes to South Sudan, there's yet no stock exchange, but there are banks there. So there's also growth in that. In South Sudan, it's also very underdeveloped. So when we talk about capital markets in this session, we are not going to look at the full East African community partner state as it is right now. We are going to look at Kenya, we are going to look at Uganda, we are going to look at Rwanda, we are going to look at Tanzania. So because the others are still growing, they are not yet where they ought to be. So with East African, with those 4 countries, we can say that they have trading platforms. That is the Nairobi Stock Exchange, the Rwanda Stock Exchange, the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange, and the Uganda Securities Exchange. They have trading platforms, so they're able to trade. They also, that means their market infrastructure to be able to partake in capital markets is well grown. We can also say that when it comes to the stock exchanges, we have 4 operational stock exchanges in the East African community, which are still in Nairobi, Kenya, Rwanda, Dar es Salaam, and Uganda. We have about 110 companies that are listed together on the 4 exchanges. In 2011, we can say that the equity market capitalization was about $122 billion. That means those are the total value of shares of the securities that were traded on the 4 stock exchanges. The Nairobi Stock Exchange had the highest, which was 55%. And why do we keep talking about stock exchanges, yet we are here to discuss capital markets? We are doing that because they are both correlated. Because the capital markets and the essence of the capital market is to be able to mobilize savings and investments for the country. And then the capital market is also meant to ensure that the money that is raised is well reaches everybody. We are also, the other essence of capital markets is to ensure that there is the securities traded, that the securities are traded well on the capital markets. The other thing that I was told to talk about is a market infrastructure. So the good thing about the East African community capital markets is that they are all working together. It's called regional integration in the EAC. And what they've done is they have removed constraints on capital transactions, and they have also harmonized the market infrastructure. That's why we are saying that the 4 trading platforms, they all have trading platforms and they are all trading on it. This has been made possible because of the capital market infrastructure. They're trading together. It's a technology platform that enables them to be able to work together in harmony, to be able to reduce the transactions, and to be able to ease all the investors in the East African community. They can be able to trade on one platform. So that makes it very easy for them. So what about when we talk about the legal and regulatory structure of capital markets in the 4 countries that we are dealing with when it comes to the capital markets, that's Kenya, that's Uganda, that's Tanzania, and that's Rwanda. They are more or less the same because they are members of, the 4 countries are members of an international body known as IOSCO, which is the International Stock Exchange. Kenya and Uganda, I think, are at a more developed stage than the rest, but the rest are also coming up to speed so that they can be able to comply with what the international standards want. So when it comes to when we bring it down now to the regional level of the East African community, the capital markets are all discussed in what is known as the EAC Capital Market Subcommittee. And this is under the Capital Markets Insurance and Pensions Committee, which oversees and ensures that the capital markets in the whole of the East African community are in harmony and they are working together. So when we look at that, we realize that the ESG security regulators have all now decided to form associations so that the stockbrokers and the market participants can be able to also engage in what is going on in the capital markets in the whole of East Africa, because we are saying that we are one. So there's a body that is known as East Africa Securities Regulatory Authorities. That is only for the security regulators. Then we have the East Africa Stock Exchange Association, which is just for the market participants. But all this together, they report back to the Capital Market Subcommittee in the East African community. We can say that the best achievement of the East African capital markets working together in the regional has been the cross-listing initiative, which has enabled companies to cross-list within the EAC. We have 7 on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, we have 5 on the Uganda Securities Exchange, 3 on the Dar es Salaam, and 3 on the Rwanda. So we can confidently say that the roadmap for integration of the capital markets in the EAC is on the right traction under the EAC Common Market Protocol as we prepare for the monetary union. So where are we? Another thing I was tasked to do by Ray was to discuss about the capital markets in Kenya. Where are we? The capital market in Kenya, they say it's the most highly developed because we have different institutions that when you look at the CMA website, you realize there are different institutions which have all been licensed. We have like 5 different institutions. That also includes the central depository. And all the 4 countries that you have spoken about, Kenya, Uganda, Dar es Salaam, and Rwanda, they all have central depositories. And the essence of the trade depositories is they enable the trading systems to be able to work together. When people, like if you go on the stock exchange, you're able to clear, you're able to work on it faster than if. That's why it's called the central depository, because there's automated clearing, there's delivery, and there's settlement on this. So that's why it's very easy for the 4 different depositories to be able to work together. So the Capital Markets Authority in Kenya, it's in Nairobi, it is on the Embankment Plaza. Its work is to regulate the different entities that it regulates. And this includes the investment banks, the collective schemes, the fund managers. All those people are regulated by the capital markets. So in terms of how can lawyers partake in capital markets. Lawyers can partake in capital markets first by being conversant with the regulations on the capital markets. You can also do a course on the CIS, which gives you the knowledge to be able to understand what capital markets are all about. But then you have also to go out and network so that you can be able to partake in capital markets. Capital markets is not something that that you come across and you can easily deal. You must market yourself. Yeah, CIS in full. I can see somebody asking, what is CIS? Those are collective investment schemes. Collective investment schemes are schemes that they are like funds. They are funds that come about. And what happens is it's a portfolio of funds that you bring together. And from those funds now, people are able to deal with them depending on where they are from. With the Islamic funds, you trade with them. With the normal funds, then you invest them in different portfolios. Yeah. I believe that question has been answered. So that's what we talk about when you talk about capital markets. You can only partake in it if you're right environment. Capital markets is one of the things that we can say falls under financial sector. It's like banks, but it's highly specialized, and it is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority, which is found at the Embankment Plaza. There's a website that is CMA. You can go on it and you find whatever it is that you need to do, how to get the approvals. But then to be able to get more information on it and to be able to get more information on the products, you can do a course. It's a CC course. And that's a course that is going to enable you to understand the basics. Then from that, then you can be able to plug yourself. Yes, a majority of the people who are in this space are people who have worked in the commercial space. So you need to be able, but that does not mean that nobody else can be able to partake in it. You can be able to partake in it. So I guess I will leave it at that. And yeah, I'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fata, for that knowledge and for revealing to us so many things that most of us and people are coming to know. I hope we are getting something, and I would love to let you know that the side on the chat, the webinar questions area is open, so you can ask any questions that you want so that we can have them answered during the Q&A session, which will be 20 minutes to the end of the hour, the end of the last hour. And as Patricia has rightly said, there's so much that the capital markets has to offer and needs to offer to us as lawyers. So we need to be prepared in the collective investment schemes courses that we are supposed to take up, and even to be prepared on how to advise our clients and different clients on how to go into the market. So I would love again to introduce the next session and the next panelist. That is Miss Alison Kwikiriza Seru Kaka. Sorry. I just want to briefly introduce Alison, who is coming to discuss the emerging trends in the capital markets across the region. As you have seen, Patricia discussed about cross-listing initiatives, which is a common way of companies coming to with their shares, listing their shares in different markets that is not like their primary place of where they had listed their shares. So we are going to have this discussion on the emerging trends in the capital markets across the region from Ms. Allison. Allow me to introduce Ms. Allison. Ms. Allison is the Legal and Board Affairs Manager at Capital Markets Uganda, where she's primarily responsible for the development of the authority's regulatory framework, as well as providing general legal advisory and board secretarial services. Prior to this, she was the Legal Compliance Manager and Company Secretary at the Uganda Securities Exchange. Allison is an advocate of the High Court of Uganda and has over 10 years of experience, majorly acquired in in-house practice, post-admission to the bar. She is a member of the Uganda Law Society, East African Law Society, a member of the East African Law Society In-House Council Committee, and a member of the Quality Assurance Board of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Uganda. So with this, Alison is ready, and I know she is prepared to go take us through the emerging trends in the capital markets across the region. You are welcome, Alison.
Thank you, Rachel, for that kind introduction, and thank you, Patricia, for those insights that have really set the pace for the discussion this afternoon. And good afternoon to the fellow panelists and those online. Thank you for taking the time. Emerging trends in the capital markets across East Africa, a very interesting topic that was assigned to me. Obviously, the East Africa capital markets are still quite young comparatively if you look at other developed countries, but there's been quite a bit of traction from a regulatory perspective, from a product perspective, and some of these emerging trends and changes have really been driven by the unique capital needs that Africa and specifically East Africa as a region presents. When you look at the needs of SMEs, when you look at the capital needs, for instance, of startups, a lot of this has shaped the general emerging trends that I'll be sharing on as I go along in my discussion. I think for starters, probably most of us are aware, but for the benefit of everyone on the call, just to understand that the primary purpose of capital markets is two-pronged. On one hand, you have them as the core opportunity or avenue through which business entities can raise long-term capital. And not only business entities, but even governments can be able to raise capital to support their different financial needs for particular products. And on the other hand, you have the suppliers of this capital who are the investors, yourselves, myself, the retail investors that are able to put some money from our savings. And then we have the institutional investors, the large pension funds, for instance, the different social security funds across the different countries within the region, and international pension funds that are looking for good opportunities through which they can invest and earn a return on their investment by supporting these capital raising processes that are done through the capital markets. So with that background in mind, I think one of the main trends that I would like to start with as a key point for discussion would be the development of the ESG, that is the environment, social, and governance investment agenda. And we're seeing a lot of impact investors that are looking to invest in companies that are environmentally and socially conscious and applying the best standards of corporate governance. So we're seeing a shift from the traditional investment. Yes, obviously the fundamentals are still a critical determinant in terms of finding the best opportunity for placing your investment. However, this trend around impact investment, because the idea really is that if you have an entity that is keen on the environment impact, if it is keen on the social and governance issues, chances of its sustainability and its ability to return a good investment return in the long run are more likely. And this is a trend we're seeing. And from a regulator's perspective, I think where we are headed is to say, how do we then incorporate some of these elements that investors find relevant to guide their investment decisions within our own legal and regulatory framework? On one hand, you want the entities that are raising capital to be able to disclose accurately the areas they're actually working towards in terms of ESG, and you want this disclosure to be as accurate and detailed as possible to meet the investors' expectations. And this is one of the trends that we are really seeing pick up. We do not yet have any specific regulations across the three entities. However, I do know that in the Kenyan jurisdiction, for instance, the stock exchange, the Nairobi Stock Exchange, has gone a bit of a distance in terms of setting up guidelines around ESG disclosures and reporting. And we hope that we'll probably have a blueprint for the region, a benchmarking of some of the guidelines that have been incorporated there. I know the Uganda Securities Exchange is also embarking on a similar process. And this going forward is likely to become a more substantive regulatory issue as we deal with investment. Moving on in terms of emerging trends, I'd like to focus a bit more on products. When we look at the last maybe 3 or 4 years, we're seeing a development of more complex products, and these are really driven by international and foreign investors. And one of the products that we are looking at, again linked to ESG, is climate financing. We're seeing high appetite for investing in, for instance, green bonds. And green bonds, really, these are products, these are fixed income products that can be channeled through the capital markets, but are specifically linked to growth parameters that reflect attention to environment protection and environment consciousness. And we're seeing this come through quite a lot, supported by a demand from the foreign investors who incidentally form the bulk. If you look at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, the Uganda Securities Exchange, the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange, you'll find that on average, the foreign investment institutional investors form the bulk of the volume that is traded on those particular platforms. And so they do drive a lot of, they do have a lot of weight in terms of driving product trends. And this is something that is that is keenly and rapidly developing across the different markets that we need to pay attention to. The other area that, from a product perspective, that has been growing rapidly, and it's not really a new development, but we've seen multiple changes across the last 5 or so years, is around fintech. Fintech has really proliferated the capital markets, both as especially as a delivery mechanism within the markets, but also as a potential product in the markets. There's been from a product perspective, there are discussions ongoing around blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies, and whether the markets are ready for some of these products to be introduced through the capital markets and be traded as underlying securities for various products. Obviously, and as Patricia mentioned in her submissions, the markets are at different stages of development. So there's a bit of catch up here and there, and also trading carefully that needs to happen. However, we know that this is a discussion that is here to stay. So as regulators across the board, what is happening now is to liaise with the different market players, and even to liaise with the different regulators in the wider financial services sector, for instance, the central banks, to align on the position around blockchain technology and cryptocurrency as a product within the financial services sector. And definitely that will feed into the discussions around whether or not some of these products can actually be introduced in the near future in the capital market space. But on a lighter note, from as a delivery mechanism, we've seen that fintechs have sort of brought the markets closer to the retail, the wananchi. In Uganda, we call them the muntu wawansi. We saw that in the most recent IPO in the region, that is that's the MTN IPO, where you're able to have people participate in an IPO via their mobile phone in the comfort of their home. Previously, the IPO process has been quite laborious. You have manual intervention, applying for the IPO, rather applying for subscription for the shares. But you find that with the introduction of fintechs and integrating this within the capital markets, and specifically for the stock exchanges, you have straight-through processes from the point of participating in an IPO to the point of secondary market trading. And we are likely to see more and more complex developments in this area. Obviously, this comes with its own challenges from a risk perspective. And as regulators, that is the focus of the day, to understand the different risks that are being introduced by these integrations. Key to note issues around data protection, issues around accessibility and cost effectiveness for the investor, and how investor protection can be ring-fenced even while we're using these delivery mechanisms that seem easier, but may not be easy enough for everyone across the board. And some of the regulatory developments that we are looking at, especially from the Ugandan perspective, is to ensure that we're able to incorporate aspects of fintech monitoring as a delivery mechanism within the capital market space, and ensuring that the different risks that are being introduced by these fintech delivery mechanisms are actually adequately managed and do not impact investors negatively. In terms of products, the last item I would highlight is around crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, like I mentioned, capital markets in East Africa, while quite nascent, have been developing quite rapidly. And again, it speaks to the unique needs of the different businesses, the unique capital needs of the different businesses within the different partner states. And if you look at, say, for instance, the SMEs and the startups operating across the region, I think one of the key go-to areas for raising capital has been crowdfunding. The main issue for us as regulators, and the key emerging issue in this area, is really around how to manage regulation of an activity or a platform that is borderless in terms of raising capital. So you find that there is still an ongoing debate around how we can harmonize the regulation of crowdfunding, for which is majorly being utilized by SMEs and startups. This is an ongoing conversation across the different partner states. Currently, there is no specific regulation around crowdfunding, so it is open, but there are parameters that would perhaps indicate that one is crossing over from crowdfunding to making an initial public offer that would require various regulatory approvals within the context of the different capital markets acts for the different countries in EAC. But this discussion is definitely one that needs to be fast-tracked. And from a legal perspective, I think it would be worthwhile for legal practitioners to weigh in on the discussion because of the different implications it would have for some of your clients, and generally in terms of how money can be raised by different business entities across the region. Finally, and away from products, I just want to speak a little bit about valuation of public companies, and how this has sort of led to the growth of private equity within the East African region. This is a trend that we've also seen, and really the conversation is around how the valuation of public companies, whether it is the transparency or lack thereof, has supported a growth, a high growth, leaning towards utilization of private equity capital for companies to raise their capital as they try to grow. And one of the areas that is being discussed from a regulatory perspective is around regulations around valuation. Is this something that is feasible within the different regulatory frameworks? And if so, we know that there are different valuation methods. How do we actually harmonize across the board? We know that when an IPO happens, say in Kenya, when an IPO happens in Uganda, it is usually opened up to the different East African citizens. And we need to be able, beyond the typical disclosure that we've been seeing in the different IPOs over time, the conversation right now is how do we actually ascertain that this is a true and fair value of shares that are being offered in the capital markets. So from a regulatory perspective, this is also an ongoing discussion, and it's really coming from a point of seeing an emerging trend of listed companies or offers that the public has indicated do not and may not be reflective of the intrinsic value of the offer to the public. Finally, before I hand back over to you, Rachel, I just want to highlight, for the benefit of the people on the call, just 4 areas that have become more developed in the capital market space. Traditionally, we know that we always refer to the stock exchanges and the trading of shares, the equity products as the traditional capital markets products. However, and I know Patricia referenced the collective investment schemes, which are growing rather rapidly. We know in Uganda, there's been a huge growth in assets under management in terms of collective investment schemes, and even the number of collective investment schemes that have been licensed in the last 2 years alone is rapidly growing. So collective investment schemes are now becoming a go-to point in terms of investment when it comes to the capital market space. I know this is a similar trend in Kenya as well. Then we also have the fixed income market. Fixed income market, you majorly have the government bonds and securities, as well as corporate bonds. And although for a long time, this market has not really been regulated in the traditional sense, majorly because it is dominated by government bonds and securities, and a lot of the investors in this space buy to hold without having a lot of secondary market activity in this space. But I think one of from a regulatory perspective, there are discussions both in Uganda, in Nairobi, and in Rwanda. Probably Dar es Salaam is slightly different because there is they have a slightly more developed regulatory framework for the fixed income markets. But this is something that in the short to medium term is going to come under more public scrutiny in terms of how the secondary market is regulated, how primary dealers, specifically banks, support the retail in accessing fixed income securities in the public auctions, and how we are able to foster transparency and price discovery as some of these auctions are actually happening, and the secondary market trading in the fixed income securities is actually done. We have also the private equity space that is one of those areas that also falls within the capital markets that has not been in a traditional sense linked to the capital markets. We see a lot of activity in Kenya around private equity. In Africa, of course, we have the West Africa taking the lead in terms of private equity activity. But this is growing, and we're seeing a lot of funds, international funds, seeking recognition to be able to either invest or collect monies for investment within the different East African countries. And so it's important to also appreciate the regulatory framework around the recognition of these funds, especially for those that may have international clients that would like to play within this space. There are regulatory frameworks for recognition of the funds across the different countries. And we are also seeing a need to align the different regulatory requirements. Patricia did speak about IASCO and the role it plays in terms of setting international standards. And this also becomes a critical player as we try to align and harmonize standards for, especially around investor protection for international funds that would like to play within the East African space. Rachel, if I could hand over back to you for now. I'll take questions later.
Thank you so much, Alison. That was very well detailed and quite very insightful. And I know that already we are having an overview of what we are going to take from. Like I said, by the time we go away today, we are going to understand, we will have understood what the capital markets are, the emerging trends, how they benefit the economy, how we can encourage the local businessmen to join this, lucrative markets and businesses. And my take home already today is that in the products, that ESG plays quite a great role in determining whether some companies or investors will be able to invest in our or buy shares in our companies. And the guidelines are clear. Kenya has them. I have shared with Gabriel on his WhatsApp. I think he will share with us the NSE ESG disclosure guidelines. I've also taken home the fact that technology has played a great role, with her saying that right now the IPOs are now being the people are quickly via MTN. They're able to quickly invest and to quickly buy shares and all get involved in this market. I've also gotten something that the investor is, the protection of the investor is very key in making sure that a market is very comfortable and people are able to invest in. So thank you so much, Alison. And I would love to welcome our next person. Like I can again quickly announce that the plenary session, the Q&A session is open. It's not yet open, to be open towards the end of the second hour, 20 minutes to the second hour in this webinar. And I would love you to write down your questions or note them down when the time comes, so that you can be able to ask for our panelists are here and they are ready to answer. I would quickly love to invite our next panelist, that is Kenneth Mwasi Nzagi, and he is going to take us through the challenges and opportunities in capital markets. So I think let us be ready, but first I would love to introduce Kenneth himself. Kenneth is currently the head of business advisory, supporting corporate investment banking for a commercial bank, with over 10 years experience with the Tanzanian capital markets regulator, and also as a senior legal officer, and has worked as a capital markets investment advisor for a securities brokerage and advisory firm engaging in both private and public transactions. I believe Kenneth is the one who is the right person for this next session. He will be able to lead us through the challenges and opportunities in capital markets for us as East Africa and the different nations and regions at large. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Kenneth Zaki.
Thank you very much, Rachel, our moderator. I would like to thank the Secretariat, as well as my fellow panelists and members for taking the time to join us for this session on capital markets. Right, so I'm here to discuss on the challenges and opportunities that can be found in the capital market, with a specific twist on actually how we can leverage those opportunities for lawyers to be able to capitalize on that. But firstly, I'm always cognizant of the fact that maybe there could be a first timer here, someone that doesn't understand capital markets or is slightly lost. So first, I would just like to explain that, sorry, let me just set my timer here. I would just like to explain that when we're talking about capital markets, you have debt capital markets as well as equities capital markets. And in light of that, you are also looking at, you could also be looking at the private side or the public side of things. So when discussing the challenges and opportunities, I would like to take an approach where I give you a dual view, where you could either be more fully hands-on or you can be slightly hands-off in your approach to engaging the capital market space. Now, I would like to begin with the challenges first, because as you will see, most of the opportunities come from addressing some of these challenges that we're facing in the market. The first one, the obvious one, elephant in the room, is lack of awareness. And this is lack of awareness on the market side and on the product side, which also would blind you from the opportunities, because you are not very much aware of what is available out there. And in terms of markets, we're talking about on the investor side, they're not really sure what products are out there, what products they can purchase, whether they're eligible for those products, and things like that. But on the side of awareness on the product side, people are not aware of the type of products, at least in the Tanzanian context, products that are available in the market, different modes of fundraising or investing. The other challenge that is also being faced in the market, we're looking at skills and capabilities. Now, not all the markets, as mentioned by my fellow panelists, not all markets are as developed as each other, but there is a dependency as well. So with moving parts, you need from all the parts to be moving in a harmonious way in order to be able to have an effective, like a regional market. So this also brings us down to the third challenge, which is also low volume of participation regionally. Because if you heard the introduction, there's a lot of work that is being done, a lot of groundwork that has already been laid out, but the uptake has been slightly on the low side, on the low end. And this is mainly for regional space in terms of whether participation from regional players in different markets. So the volume on that has been low, but it's been slightly improving over time as we grow the market. There's also an issue of low liquidity in the market. And this has many factors that come into it, but you usually you find our markets being mainly dominated by commercial banks as well as pension funds. And usually, as rightly mentioned, these guys usually just buy and hold until maturity. So that doesn't give enough space for secondary market trading and the liquidity that the market would need in order for it to be effective. On another challenge that is common for most of us in the region is the capital account liberalization, and basically the opening up of capital accounts to ensure the free movement of capital, whether it's inwards or outwards trending. So this actually kind of gives hesitation to even foreign investments in order to come into our markets in order to invest. Okay. Another challenge that is also being faced by the market is in capital markets, it's adversely susceptible to market changes, market events. So we're talking whether it's a financial crisis or it's a global health crisis. So basically, as you're aware, this is it's essentially capital market is the mobilization of savings for investment purposes. And so if there's a financial crisis, the chances that people would be saving, those savings will go much lower, and ergo affecting ability for individuals to save and businesses to raise capital. Another challenge, which I mentioned very lightly, but in some respects, people find regulatory as being a barrier. So regulations and specifically on fees for transactions, fees for issuances. In some jurisdictions, they find the market players, they find the fees to be slightly on the high end, but usually these fees are fixed and they're trying to reflect the market conditions. But that is also something that is faced in acquiring once people are trying to actually do transactions in the capital market space. Another challenge that was also actually mentioned is integration into foreign markets. Now, there's a lot of work being done in terms of integrating regionally, but integration with foreign markets hasn't taken off as such. But I guess it requires everything else to be in place in order for us to be able to tap into those other foreign global markets out there. And the final challenge that I would like to mention to the members, it's in terms of investor-ready businesses as well. And here, from my experience, it's been always on around issues of governance, of corporate governance. And here we're talking about an ideal candidate to tap into the capital markets to raise funding, but they're unable to because of their governance structure and unwillingness or reluctance to set up an appropriate governance structure that will enable them to actually expand their businesses and perform much better. Now, this is what I'd like to share with you in terms of the challenges. I'd like to proceed now to the opportunities, my favorite part, for the lawyers. So the first opportunity, as was mentioned in the first in the introduction, it's really around regional integration. Now, the reason why that excites me is because that essentially opens our markets up and increases the size of our market, so that even foreign investors would be interested to look at us maybe as a block. Now, here we're talking about the East Africa community, we're talking about SADC, even ASEA for Tanzania. So basically, this means that we have good relations and integration with these different countries that are members. It provides opportunities for businesses to take place, for funds to be raised, and for investments to be made. And if you look at it, the regional integration is actually trying to address issues like market liquidity, issues like lack of diverse financial products. But most importantly, it's also going to widen our investor base. And bottom line, at the end of the day, if we are in the capital raising business, the number of people that can actually invest in those businesses is your key demographic. So being able to, whether it's a corporate or an individual, being able to have a wider base is actually something that makes the fundraising exercise even easier. Now, we can talk about also opportunities that comes from harmonization of the legal frameworks that we have. Okay, so this is driven mainly because of our drive towards a common market and a single currency, and all these things really come into play together, like spokes in a wheel. Of course, the approach for the East African region has been through directives, which thankfully, actually, I was part of the team that designed the East African community directives for the capital markets back in the day. And essentially, it just provides the bottom line for every player, as well as allowing each member state to implement locally. Now, that's important because as the legal fraternity, as the stakeholders, we can also chip into what we feel will be the best way to implement such directives, not just take it as is. But the other opportunity is also about the infrastructure that is being built, because again, moving parts, all these parts need to move together. So the infrastructure in facilitating trading, clearing, and settlement, having those harmonized and working together is a great opportunity for fundraisers. And another opportunity under regionalization and integration is actually the treatment of the investor. Now, you're no longer being treated as a foreigner, you're being treated as a local investor with all rights therein. So that I find, in terms of the regional integration aspect, is a very good opportunity for our sector. Now, I would like to discuss opportunities in terms of the market and also the regulatory support that is available. Basically, I recommend to staying close with the regulator, because for most things and most actions, basically they do stakeholder engagement, they look for our views, they try to find out the best way to do their thing. So staying close with the regulator actually helps you with your clients as well as your personal knowledge. In terms of the Tanzanian experience, the regulator has been very accommodating in terms of accepting new products, in terms of looking for innovative ways of doing business, all in an effort to grow the market. And such initiatives includes Islamic bonds, social bonds, crowdfunding, incorporating ESG requirements in some products, and creating sandbox model as well for accommodating especially fintech, in order to get them into the space, whether it will be helping with retail investor penetration or something like that. So they've been upfront with all these things and leading the way in the Tanzanian space. But there are also upcoming guidelines in terms of venture capital, as well as work that has already been done in municipal bonds. So these are all opportunities where lawyers can actually engage in some of these transactions in order to see how best you can support your customers or your clients. Now, let's get to the good stuff. What can lawyers actually do to leverage all these things? The first thing, as was mentioned, is law firms can actually be investment advisors. Now, the hands-off approach is for the firm to be an advisor, but the hands-off approach is to have an individual that is a trained investment and securities expert within your firm. This would give you a whole other opportunity to generate revenue through the business, even if you were leveraging your own internal clients. Law firms can also work in partnership with either licensed brokers or even international advisors in order to put together transactions. Now, here's where, of course, there's a give and take. If your firm is involved directly with the transaction, then of course the legal advisor to the transaction, you'd have to step aside. But if you are only representing them as legal, then of course there will be somebody else on the other side to take care. to take care of the investment side of things. But the possibilities are endless. These partnerships are well sought, and people are actually very interested in tapping into our market. Sometimes just size becomes an issue, quantum. One thing I would like to remind members is that as a licensed investment advisor, whether as an individual or as an entity, you will still be a reporting person. So under FIU or you'll be a reporting person essentially, and you'll be a reporting person, and you would also have to make sure that you would have a fiduciary duty to your clients, meaning that you have to have their best interest at all times when you're conducting your transactions. Another space where law firms can also play is in the regional space. So for cross-border transactions. Now you could choose to either just be an array, is exactly how it sounds, or you could be a lead advisor for that transaction. And all it takes is either whether it's certification or licensing in order to be able to do these things. Another opportunity which I found very interesting, at least in the Tanzanian space, was we have the Tanzanian Investment Center. Now, the Tanzania Investment Center is always trying to register projects, bring in investors from outside, even local investors to be mobilized. And essentially, they have an investor services provider. So meaning, if you meet the criteria to be an investor services provider, somebody that provides support on the investment side of any business, then that means you can be registered there, be on record there, and maybe you can get referrals based on your line of expertise. So these are the kind of small little opportunities that are usually hidden in the industry. Another opportunity that is also available is if we look at the observation of the Tanzanian mutual fund. Now, there's been a huge explosion in the past 2 years of investment in mutual funds, and this is the CIS that they were mentioning. And essentially, it just exploded. And this only means one thing. I mean, okay, sure. People could be investing in mutual funds and maybe they're excited about it, but actually it could mean that there are no diverse products in the market or where people could actually park their money. And so this just shows you that, this is even demonstrated in oversubscriptions, whether it was an IPO or oversubscription for government securities and things like that. So this definitely demonstrates appetite for people to invest, and which brings us back to, are there investor-ready businesses that can actually mobilize capital through the capital market? My observation is also that foreign investors are always looking to invest in large quantities, so they always prefer to be doing larger transactions, meaning as a block, as EAC, as SADC, there's a higher chance of success for fund mobilization for projects, as opposed to, say, you're just doing a national project. My last contribution in terms of the opportunities is also for lawyers to leverage their relationship with their banks, because for any skill that you do not possess, there's somebody that has that capacity. You can probably arrange to issue a bond, but the settlement of those bonds, the coupon payments, that is a whole other player that is going to be handling those things. So this interconnectedness in terms of how we do our transaction is actually where the opportunities are. And you can always leverage on the other guy, because your interests will always be aligned. I always say that if you'd convince your banker to issue a bond for your client, then where do the deposits sit? Even after the fundraise, where do the deposits sit? So the benefits are always there. It's just how to understand it, how it's structured. the interest payments are, and yeah, and that's how we can always leverage on our other partners that we do businesses with. And in short, I think I would release those remaining, I think, 6-7 minutes to you, Rachel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Thanks so much, Kenneth. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Kenneth. That was quite an eye-opener for us, especially. I can speak for myself when I say that the challenges are actually so practical, the things and the issues that we go through in trying to invest in these markets, and also giving us a bit of the solutions to this and how it can help us, especially as advocates who have tried to get into the market, into this great practice area, especially in the terms of what I've taken out of this is that you have to be commercially aware of what the industry is about, of what the practice area entails, and also to understand the dynamics on how to treat the foreign investors and how to bring them in so that they can be integrated and feel comfortable to work within our system. So, like you said, investor-ready business also is something that is key. Thank you so much, Kenneth. That was quite great. Again, I would like to say that if you have any questions, kindly, the Q&A session is very open. You can keep asking your questions or write down your questions so that you can ask them later in the last 20 minutes of the second hour. We're already within the second hour, and I would love to quickly introduce our next panelist. That is Gracia Gahimbare. I would love to and projects team, boasting a wealth of experience in banking, insurance, and competition. Kindly let me know if you are able to hear me. Can you hear me now? Because it shows my internet is showing that it's unstable.
It is okay now.
All right, thank you so much. Again, like I can go back. Gracia Gahimbare is an esteemed associate in the finance and project team department, boasting a wealth of experience in banking, insurance, and competition law. She has cultivated an impressive knowledge based in these areas, providing her with a unique and invaluable perspective on the industry. So when it comes to capital markets and the discussion on experiences in capital markets, I believe Gracia Gahimbare is able to provide us with great insight and knowledge on it. Gracia is going to discuss our last topic, which is experiences in the capital markets. Gracia is from Burundi. Welcome, Gracia. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Rachel. Is the sound okay now? Okay. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to take you through the Burundian experience when it comes to capital market. And as it has already been mentioned by Patricia, the Burundi does not have such a vast experience because the capital market is still at a nascent stage. I have even already seen in the QR that someone asked for what should be done now for the Burundian capital market to be operational. So yes, Burundian capital market is not, I'd rather say that it is not fully operational or not yet institutionalized. Why? There are many preparatory actions that have been done so far in order to put in place a stock exchange, but activities are still ongoing. And I would also want to say before I start that the previous presenter took us through the challenges and the opportunities, the general challenges and opportunities that we have in the region. And I may say that the challenges, the opportunities are almost the same, but there are specific challenges and opportunities that we have here in Burundi because of the capital market, which has not yet been operational so far. So, first of all, concerning the stock exchange that is coming, that is being put in place, I may say that we have the law that will govern the stock exchange as an institution, which is already in place. And this is a big step forward. There is also the legal framework for the capital market regulatory. There is the board of the regulatory authority, which is already in place, and it is the board which is now actively working and putting into actions what is needed for the full operationalization of the stock exchange. But, and here I'm going to explain why I said that the Burundian capital market is not yet fully operational, because there is a market. There is a capital market which is underdeveloped, actually. This market is underdeveloped because we have, okay, how is it organized? We have government bonds which are issued, and these bonds are mainly traded by banks. Okay, so there is a primary market where mostly banks are purchasing treasury securities. And we also have a secondary market, which is very timid because, as I told you, we don't have as many key players when it comes to purchasing these treasury securities. So in the primary market, we have banks, insurance companies, pension funds, and even some individuals who will be purchasing the bonds from the treasury via their banks. So you can understand that the banks are dominating this small market, actually. And here there is also a challenge that I will touch. It's that the commercial banks, we have seen by experience that they have consistently stocked these treasury securities, and we understand that this will limit, this will leave a very limited window for them to sustain with their liquidity requirements. From there, I think I have to now announce what are the challenges that we have in this underdeveloped market, and the challenges which are perceived with the coming institution. First of all, the regulatory process is not yet consolidated. There is so far the rules and the regulations which are not yet totally put in place are restricting investments by intermediaries into the business of securities trading. Another challenge, of course, there is no experience in stock exchange. The key players which are interested so far can only learn or build an experience from what they see happening in the region and elsewhere, but there is no strong experience now from the Burundian context. And from there, you also understand that there is an investor education that is lagging behind. I think Kenneth talked about lack of awareness. You can understand if there is a problem of awareness in parts of the region where there are already stock exchanges. Now it is even more important now in Burundi, when there is almost no experience yet. So, and as I'm talking about the challenges, actually, I think this is where even the opportunities are drawn. If there may be from the audiences some people who are thinking about the Burundian market as an opportunity, I think they can draw much information from the challenges. Okay, so we also have as a challenge the absence now of professional makers in the sector. And so far, there is a challenge of lack of fiscal and administrative reforms along the regional standards in order to enhance the efficiency in the securities market transactions. And you understand from there that there is a need to undertake regulatory changes in order to align with the securities registrations and transfer processes in the securities market, with the provisions of the company's code. This is a challenge which is typical to the Burundian context. And we also have a pension industry which is not yet adequately defined. And one of the previous presenter has highlighted how the pension industry is also very important. It has a very important place when it comes to the capital market. So now I think it's important to know what are the actions which are undertook or which are the actions to be taken in the near future. And from here on, I will also be touching on the opportunities that the market has. So now there is this catalyzation, which is on course, the catalyzation of the establishment of a formal structure under the capital markets. There is also the introduction of reforms that will enhance efficiency in the securities transfer process. Because as I said previously, there is still a challenge on this part, because it is one thing to be able to purchase or to get securities in the market, but also to be able to keep or to have an ownership rights which is well protected. The actions, there are also training courses that have been already provided for potential intermediaries and issuers, and are also other training courses which are to be on the course of being provided to potential key players, sorry. In the action, there is also the public awareness actions which are currently carried out. Some intermediaries have already been taken through relevant sessions, but other sessions are to be undertook after that or in the near future. So now what are the opportunities? Of course, there are opportunities for new investors to trade in securities. Now there will be room which will be left for other investors other than the banks or the commercial banks which I already said that are dominating the underdeveloped market, which is already in place. So this is a general opportunity, but now what are the opportunities for the legal practitioners? And here you may understand that opportunities not only for Burundian legal practitioners, but also opportunities for legal practitioners from across the region. So far, we do not have a trust law in Burundi, and there is, of course, a need for introducing a trust law. Well, this is an important requirement in developing the institutional framework for creating structured investments vehicles. Here, a lawyer can understand which opportunity he can seize. There will also be a need, of course, to assist interested companies in preparing important documents such as the prospectus, of course. And there will, of course, be an opportunity when it comes to assisting companies to align with the regulatory requirements. So I think this is briefly what I can say about the Burundian context when it comes to capital markets. And I think if there is any other aspect which the audience needs or would need to be highlighted on, it can come out, I think, through the discussion which will come after. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gracia, for that. I would now love to welcome the participants and all of you. I want you to know that the Q&A session is open, and maybe we can start with the questions that have been asked on the Q&A session. And I think the first two are answered, but maybe we can say them. And then we see the first was from Pierre Clever, Gato, and he was saying, what are the main steps of establishment of a capital market? And I believe Patricia answered. Maybe Patricia, you'd like to quickly also give a brief on your answers. Plus also I think Mary Murugi also answered. Yes, Patricia.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, Pierre first asked what are the main steps of establishing capital markets? And my answer was the first step so that the country needs to have a credible banking system, a central depository system, and a stock exchange. But to expound on that, I'd have to say for a capital markets to first thrive, you look at the stability of the country, because when you talk about capital markets, we are also talking about investors. We are also talking about the local regime being stable so that you can find that people trust the system. They're not putting money under the mattresses. Yeah, they're coming to the banks to deposit. They're trading. So those are the first steps of establishing a capital markets, because when you establish, most countries that have established capital markets, it started from a stable banking system. And that's why you can see like the countries in the EAC that don't have capital markets are coming up to speed because you're already having very credible banking systems. So that was my answer. Then following that, Mary Murugi asked, most corporates in Africa have been dominant in the stock market, which has been declining since 2017. And in most instances, corporates have opted for short-term funding. What policy interventions can you put in place to revive the stock market in Africa? Yeah, so I think for me, the straightforward question for this one would be to restore the investor confidence and also to protect the investors. But I will throw the question back at you. Maybe somebody else can be able to tackle it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Maybe we can throw it at Kenneth.
Hello. Yeah. The question?
The question is from Mary Murugi. Says most corporates in Africa have been dormant in the stock market, which has been declining since 2017. And in most instances, corporates have opted for short-term funding. What policy interventions can be put in place to revive the stock market in Africa?
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's slightly of a wide question, but issues, engagement with the government is always key, whether it's a broker, whether it's legal. Engagement with the government is the only way we can get our voices heard, or through our associations, whether it's the brokers associations or even the law association in terms of contributions. So and then the rest go down in terms of taxes and things like that, and all these incentives that these companies can be provided. And of course, they would go for the short-term loans or the bank products, because those are the ones that are prevalent right now. But if you look at, for instance, IPOs, that is the public money that can drive any business, but they have to be incentivized to come that route. That will be my contribution to that.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Ms. Allison, you want to say something concerning this?
Thank you, Gabriel. I'll agree with that, Kenneth. I think it boils down to the incentives that are being offered to the corporate entities to raise to seek financing through the public markets. We do know that the capital available in the banking space is attractive, both from an interest rate perspective, but also in terms of turnaround time. I know one of the issues that has been raised, especially with the regulators, is around the length of time it takes to prepare a company to go public and go through the process of making a public offer in order to acquire that capital. When you compare it to the banking space, you're having a turnaround time of 24 hours or less in terms of short-term financing. So we need to build capacity around the competitiveness of the capital markets insofar as providing this capital is concerned to these corporate entities. Obviously, the issue that had earlier been mentioned around the business readiness of those entities to go public is also a critical issue to look at. Usually you'll find that at the tail end of the process, there are governance issues, there are issues around tax compliance, and these sort of prohibit the ability of a company to utilize the capital markets to obtain this financing. So again, as we deal with the policy issue, we also need to look at how ready these corporate entities are to seek that financing within the capital market space. And again, if we're talking about opportunities for lawyers, this is one of the areas that would really be a space they can work with to make the businesses ready to access this capital.
Thank you so much, Alison. That is very, I think it explains most of it from all the panelists who have spoken. Mary, I hope that answers your question. And Pierre, the first question, I hope that answers your first question. Pierre again asked, he would like to know the main challenges of capital market within East African community, which is not integrated economically speaking. And I think Patricia answered. Kindly, Patricia, maybe you can again.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm trying to see, I'd like to know the main challenge of capital markets within AIC, which is not integrated economically. Let me just expound and see. So I said one of the main challenges has to be different levels of economic growth in the EAC partner states. The different capital markets are also on different compliance with international standards. That was my response. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any other responses? Any other person trying to respond? Kenneth, Alison, Grant? Or from the participants and from the attendees? Anyone who can respond? Thank you so much. Maybe we could go to the next one. There was also a question from an anonymous attendee says, so are there any joint efforts to curb the lack of awareness challenge being the elephant in the room, as you named it, Kenny? That I think is for Ken.
Okay, sure. So yes, now I can speak from the Tanzanian experience, but I think this is mirrored throughout all the East African bloc. Essentially, but this was about training, yeah? Sorry, Rachel.
It's about the lack of awareness. Yes.
Lack of awareness. Yes. Lack of awareness. Yes. So basically, all the regulators, as part of either their annual plan as well as their 5 to 10 year plans, have a full-on. For the most part, they have a full-on training schedules or plans that they will roll out nationwide in different mediums as well, whether it will be radio program or it would be a training session or something like that. So they all do, and for the most part, they're all supported by the Ministry of Finance as well. So this goes all the way to improving financial literacy. In Tanzania, there's a program where university students are actively engaged with the regulatory team, going to the universities to give presentations and give them access to Wi-Fi so that they can do mock trading and things like that. So efforts are always there being made, and it's actually the private sector that has been lagging in terms of this investor education and investor awareness. But it should really be a joint effort between the market participants as well as the regulators in order to get an effective delivery of awareness to the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe that answers that. Our next question is from Benny King Dushikane. He says, my name is Benny, an advocate from Burundi, currently in the United States. His question is, policymaker says that no foreigner should own land in Burundi. How can foreign investors purchase shares without becoming owners of some assets? The second question is there a law which indicates how is a foreigner direct investor in terms of percentage? How are foreign direct investors? I didn't get that question. Well, but maybe you can attempt to answer it. From Burundi, maybe I would welcome Gracia. Gracia, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I would like to highlight something. When it comes to that question, it was said that no foreigner will be able to own not a security, they will be able to buy security.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that when it comes to that, you should know that there can be some political decisions or some political initiatives that can seem to be hindering currently, but we believe that in the near future, there will be even possibilities still given to foreigners to own properties. And actually, it was said that no foreigner would be able to own a land. And this is actually very different when it comes to securities. There is no hindering so far for foreigners to be able to trade in securities when the time comes. Thank you.
Rachel, if I can add something to that. Hello, Rachel?
Yes, Ken, you may add something to that. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Just to add on to that, for the most part, things are always market driven. So to give you a good example on when doors are closed, but if people are determined, doors will open up for them as long as they're doing the right thing. We had a situation where we had an IPO of a major telecom in Tanzania. And because of, I guess, national politics and whatnot, like a lot of people thought, oh, we can mobilize these funds internally, let's restrict it to residents, I believe it was then. But then people came up with different solutions. I think somebody created a CIS. That CIS would be able to purchase those securities, which would then be owned by a foreign entity or a foreign individual. So it's really about market demand that would sometimes drive results as well. Thank you.
CIS, Patricia has defined CIS as collective investment schemes. Maybe to just lighten up and understand it further, you can check out on what CISs are. Thank you so much, Ken, for answering that. I hope that answers your question. Benny, we also have another question from Shamiza Ratansi. She says, what are the moves made to make underwriting such IPOs, initial public offers, successful, and the position on anchor fees as well as make whole fees for the markets in East Africa? I can repeat that. What are the moves made to make underwriting such IPOs successful, and the position on anchor fees as well as make whole fees for the markets in East Africa? Alison, Ken, Patricia?
Maybe I'll share from the Ugandan perspective. Currently, we do not have specific requirements. We do not have a mandatory requirement to underwrite an IPO. It is left to the discretion of the issuer. But usually we advise that it is something that needs to be carefully thought through, because the risk of undersubscription when you are putting out an IPO in a market that has been said not to have a lot of absorption capacity, especially depending on the size of the IPO, it's important that you consider underwriting as a very viable option to guard against the risk of under subscription. So as a regulator, from a regulatory perspective, right now, the best we can do is encourage the issuer to have a pragmatic approach towards ensuring a successful IPO. And one of those pragmatic approaches would be to carefully consider the need for underwriting, having gauged the market appetite and also looked at the size of the IPO and the capacity of the market as a region to actually absorb or to provide that capital. Again, in terms of anchor fees, and I believe you're speaking about the transaction advisor fees. This has also been an interesting debate. Again, no specific regulation around this, and as I speak from the Ugandan perspective, perhaps the other colleagues from Tanzania and Kenya can weigh in. This has really been left to negotiating between the transaction advisor and the issuer, but the key point to note is how it actually affects the expenses that go into the offer, and at the end of the day, how that then trickles down to the valuation of the price and and how it impacts the different incentives that come along with the particular IPO. So again, these are factors that are really being controlled by the prevailing market. Discussions are held around them to make sure that the issuer at the back of the mind has a pragmatic view of how they actually impact the cost and the success of the IPO, but we do not have regulations prescribing specific requirements around them.
Thank you so much, Ms. Allison. Any other person who?
Yes, I wanted to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I was actually making a note in terms of how transactions are structured, and I wrote down de-risking, and that's actually something that's been like a trend, you know, and it goes hand in hand with underwriting, and it's basically what really frustrates me the most is the risk ratings that we get for whether it's the country or the businesses. You know, I mean, this is a secure business. It's been here for several years, but a banker would come and give you, or an insurer would come and give you a rating that is absolutely ridiculous. And if you ask, and I compare, oh, the one that threw everything off is maybe political instability or something. It's probably, it has nothing to do with the business itself. Now, as part of that problem, the issue of having an underwriter for transactions, de-risking these investments so that the bank can actually give you a favorable rate. All this means is that then there has to be a lot of engagement with the insurance sector. And if you look at our ecosystem, we all play in the same area: the bankers, the brokers, the insurance companies. We all get grouped into one bubble. If one does well, so will the rest of us. So essentially, in the Tanzanian perspective, insurers have been actually the biggest hindrances in terms of how actually they do their risking, even the bankers, how they do their risking for projects. And that really is something that really needs to be addressed. Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. We can go to the next question from Christopher here. He says, with the increasing preference for use of collective investment schemes by investors, advise the East African Community regulators to adopt, promote cross-border investments in these vehicles across the East African community. I can repeat. Or somebody, Patricia, maybe. Kenneth and Gracia and Alison.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't hear you properly.
With the increasing preference for use of collective investment schemes by investors, What measures would you advise East African regulators to adopt to promote cross-border investments in these vehicles across East African community?
Regulators will do what regulators do, but but yes, I think we're always going back to the you get questions like oh, so what currency would we use, or would it be multi-currency? And so basically I think it's, for the most part, is to just get that framework laid out properly so that everybody understands what their rights are and obligations throughout these transactions. And of course, a few incentives as well for them to come into regional transactions as well. But yeah, like in Tanzania, UTT is damn near a tier 1 bank now in terms of assets that they're holding. So available, and then of course you do get TAS is usually very conservative as well. Maybe in some parts more conservative than the pension funds because of their clientele. But it's an opportunity that is there, but it needs just to have a framework that is robust in order for people to have comfort to do these kind of transactions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Patricia would like to say something. Or...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cross-border trade and EAC, I think that's what the question is looking at when it comes to collective investment schemes. When it comes to collective investment schemes, we have different types of collective investment schemes, but we have to take cognizance of the fact that right now, the EAC has really tried to harmonize a lot, to remove the constraints on capital and market infrastructure. So I can say that there are efforts to do this already, to ensure things like collective investment schemes are done cross-border, and also might be the CISs that I don't think have gained a lot of tractions are the Islamic finance ones, and that's because of the regulations that we have currently, but there's traction to change that. And I think the other thing that would be an issue, as has been mentioned by Kenneth, is possibly the currency. So what do we do? I know we Kenyans are at the forefront of saying, let's not trade with the dollar. Okay, fine. So if we go cross-border, what are we saying? Are we saying that the CIS should be new G shillings, should be in the TZ shillings? But then that's why international trade now comes into play. And we say that a system like the Pan-African system, which is going to allow us to be able to trade in our currencies, then is going to be important. So I think my answer is there's already traction to it because we're already harmonizing the market infrastructure. We're already talking about collective investment schemes. We're already saying that the stock markets are harmonized. So yeah, we are headed to the right direction. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I think that answers that. And the next one was from Mogume Esther. She was saying, my question is in regards to the Tanzanian capital market. She's a Ugandan in Dar, and she's noted that the laws are not as inclusive or accommodative for foreigners, especially in regards to property acquisition. Are there similar restrictions or bureaucracies in the capital markets as well? If so, what are the opportunities? And what place might those be, might those, the foreigners interested, have? I think this is like she's integrating the barriers to entry for land ownership in Tanzania with the barriers to entry, maybe with the regulations in the capital markets. Kenneth?
Yes. So it all stems from what the regulators are trying to achieve, and for the most part, the Tanzanian regulator is very conservative, and they're always worried about minority shareholders and minority stakes in these transactions. So, and the other side of that coin is also that it's about empowerment as well, because I mean, in this financial services and capitalism world and democracy and everything, a stock exchange is actually a must. socialism or socialist, basically, how would I phrase it? Like it's a socialist, it has socialist elements to them. Like it's about everybody getting a piece of the pie, through all hard work and all these things. So essentially, there would be favor towards the locals. However, through harmonization, we're trying to end all that and give favors to everyone, not just our near neighbors, but also for foreigners as well. And these strengthened institutions actually provides the confidence for these foreigners to now start to participate in larger quantities. But yes, if you ask any regulator, yes, of course we want foreign direct investments. Yes, of course we want foreigners to participate in our markets. So I don't think they would tell you they're working against foreign investors. They'll never say that. But yes, sometimes they'll put a roadblock. Sometimes they'll put a speed bump. But they talk about gradual liberalization. They talk about gradual exposure to outside markets. So yeah, it's just a matter of interpretation.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. I think that also answers it. Our next question is from Robert Ainomugisha, and he's saying, thank you, panelists. My question is, do we have institutions in the region which offer trainings in this area where lawyers can go to in order to enhance their knowledge and skills in capital markets? Another question came from Clovis Ndaihaya. He says, we had that Burundi and DRC, and it was addressed to Patricia, so that we had that Burundi and DRC, the market is not yet operational. What are the major steps to pass through to get stock exchange operational? Thank you very much. I think maybe we can start with this one, from Clovis to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Rachel. I think I'm going to give the same response that I gave with regards to the other question that was asking about what are the major steps to pass through to get a capital markets. So with all due respect, we realize that Burundi and DRC have not been stable for a while, but now they are okay. So we can say that when we talk about stock exchange, we are talking about the space. We are talking about how stable is a country, and it's a wholesome answer, because when you talk about finance, you're talking about the investments. I mean, are people going to be okay to go and bank their money? Are investors going to be okay to come into your country? Because by the time you're talking about a stock exchange, it has to be so stable that the banking system is okay, the central depositories are at play. So yeah, I can say that Burundi and DRC right now are headed to the right direction, because we can see Pan-African banks are actually going to Burundi and DRC and setting up space. So I'm sure within a very short time, Burundi and DRC are also going to start talking about stock exchanges. And as a lady who was on the panel said, she said that the stock exchange is there. It's just that it's a bit informal, but the operation has already begun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe that answers your question, Clovis. And the second one is on the trainings, where if advocates can be able to train freely. And also there was a question from Benny King Tushikane. Says one of the pillars of East Africa in free movement of services in the regions, but countries still have some restrictions. I think that was answered on harmonization. Oh, he says, thank you. But maybe we can answer the question on the whether there are opportunities for advocates or lawyers to start to get training. Yes, please.
May I add on something about when exactly we can expect the stock exchange to be fully operational? without giving a precise date, it is expected to have full operations in early 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gracia, for that information. I believe those are the questions so far. We have no more questions. Is there anybody who wants to give a remark or something? Yes.
Yeah, Rachel. So I was going to answer the question on where the lawyers can go for training. So there's an institute known as CSI. It's a Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment. It's a global institution. You can check it online. I think it's CISI, Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment. It's a UK big organization. The Kenyans can access it. Yeah, I'm sure the other countries can try and check if their countries can allow that.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I believe that answers that. Let me see if there's another question in the panel, the Q&As. Maybe anybody that would love to give a remark from the participants?
Sure, I'll go first. I'd like to thank everyone, all the participants, the moderator, the secretariat for the opportunity. And I'm also available. So if you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure you can reach out to secretariat. They can reach out to me. There's a lot that goes into some of these things. We're talking maybe slightly at a bit of a high level, but there's a lot of things that go into these transactions and the licensing and the trainings. So I am available and I am happy to assist any member with any if they have any questions or any assistance that they would need. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you to ELS for organizing this. Thank you, Rachel, for being a great moderator. And thank you to all the panelists who've been part of this. It's good to see that capital markets is finally getting some traction and some interest. It's an interesting space to be for you all lawyers. For some of us, it started by just working in an investment bank and then it grew. But I'm sure with if you're interested, you can grow. And just like Kenneth said, if you want guidance or you want to reach out, yeah, please, I'm available for that. And yeah, all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Gracia, invite.
Yes, I would also like to thank the AELS Secretariat for organizing such an insightful webinar. Thank you, Rachel, for such a good moderation. And also thank you for you panel, for you audience, because through your questions, you gave us an opportunity to get even more information on capital markets. And I believe this discussion cannot just be closed here. I believe in the future we shall have other opportunities to discuss on the other steps that have been achieved when it comes to capital market. And in final, I would like to say that we all want an integrated capital markets, and we are really, as Burundians, we are very excited for this opportunity which is coming, and we are also. I would also like to say to foreigners listening, I mean non-Burundians, that you are very welcome as investors on this capital markets which is being set up. Thank you very much, and you are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Gracia. That is welcoming, and we are feeling comfortable already. We'll be able to come and start looking into the market and how we can also invest and how to advise our clients to invest. Over to you, Alison. Alison, you're muted. Any remarks? Okay, as Alison is trying to get her remarks in, I'd love to thank you all for participating in this very insightful and and a very quite knowledgeable area of practice. And I'd like to thank the East African Law Society and also Gabriel for giving me this opportunity to moderate. I have actually learned so much, and it will not end here. Like we said, we are going to go back to question so much and be able to learn so much. I would love to thank you so much. My name is Rachel Olinga again, and I am a corporate legal manager and human resource manager for Rombas Construction Company Limited, which is dealing in project finance, leasing companies, and project public-private partnerships, and so many other areas of finance and construction. Thank you so much. Over to you, Gabriel.
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel, for that very stellar moderation that you've just concluded. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Kenneth, and thank you, Gracia, for all the effort you have put in to make this a success. It's been quite informative, even for us at the Secretariat. We've been taking notes on capital markets and considering quite a number of options available. To the participants, we thank you for staying with us for the last 2 hours of your Friday afternoon. I know Friday is very personal to very many people, and we thank God really it's always Friday. But that said, we will be sharing a recording of the session with you on email. So I hope that while registering for the session, you put your right email addresses, and we shall share with you certificates of attendance in the course of the coming days. So we are grateful to have you. And also I'd like to announce to you that we have our annual conference and general meeting 2023 in Bujumbura, Burundi on the 22nd to the 25th of November 2023. So if you have not yet registered, please register. And in case you need to find out any information regarding travel, accommodation, and how you can attend the conference, please reach out to us at info@elosociety.org, or you can go to our website. You'll find all the information there. Please tell a friend to tell a friend, and we hope to see you in Bujumbura, the city of Gracia. So that said, I wish you all a very lovely weekend, and be on the lookout for our next set of capacity building trainings next week. We have 2 of them coming up, and we'll be sharing that information. So as soon as you see it, then we'll hope to have you on the session. From us, thank you, and have a lovely afternoon.